dive in.
Okay.
The water's good. That's what they say, right?
Good.
Come on in.
Good.
Good. The water's good.
You sound like Banjo.
Good.
Banjo.
No, that's more like yeah, Smash. Finally. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, welcome to Cadmium Dread.
This is your host, Mimi Nguyen.
And Joshua Karenka.
And today we have a very special guest.
It's me.
It's him.
His
Say your name.
Oh, yeah. My name's Michael Tucker.
AKA Tucker.
Yes.
Yeah. So I should call you Tucker for the rest of this?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay. Michael Tucker. Full name.
That's fine,
That's
too.
not true.
going.
People laugh at me when I call you Michael. They're like, "Huh, who's Michael?"
Some people call me Michael. Everyone at work actually has a different nickname,
Oh.
and I just kind of I never throw out a preference to see what people default to, and I think everyone has a different name at this point.
That's too much.
Yeah, I know.
How do you
Everyone
know what
hates
to react
it, and I love it because everyone talks about me and doesn't always use the same name.
Keeps it guessing.
Yeah. People can pick their own names. There's a guy in YouTube called The Edge, and he's a grown-ass man. But his name is The Edge, and people call him The Edge.
Oh my god.
I know.
Yeah,
Names
it's
are like whatever you want them to be. It's cool.
and gamer tags.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's
Sure.
basically just a gamer tag.
Alright, from the rest of this, you can call me Baba Ganoush.
That's your
Ganesh.
gamer tag.
Yeah.
You can call me Rue. That's my Smash gamer tag.
Alright. Let's
And
not do
Smash-
that, actually,
No.
for the rest of this podcast.
No. Okay. That's fine.
Okay, back to it.
Yeah, so back to Michael Tucker.
Hi.
Hey, Michael Tucker.
Hello.
Michael Tucker is yet another shrunken head person.
We're everywhere. There's like 6 of us at Double Fine alone. That's like a tenth of the studio.
Dang.
There's like 6 of us at Glue too.
And, yeah.
You're honorary.
Yeah.
I guess. Alright, yeah, I was knighted or whatever
He
during
was.
that. Yeah, it's pretty much official.
Tucker was the librarian,
Mhm.
the club librarian. Was it the same year that Gung was the graphic designer?
I think so. Yes, it was. Yeah. We were officers in the Shrunken Headman Club at the same time, which I think was the 2013 to 2014 school year, which was our BFA years as well. Is that right? Or do we do it the year before?
Usually people do it the year before.
Yeah, so it might have been 2012 to 2013. I really don't remember.
That sounds right. You guys were my favorite officers
I
because it was
agree.
like it was when I first started getting into the club and getting more involved. So
Mhm.
like I actually remembered who you guys were.
No, it's funny because I work with Chris Lamb, who was I think the figure drawing coordinator the year that I started to really get into the club.
Mhm.
And I remember like thinking that guy was like really cool and really funny because it was just like once you find out what the club is and like kind of meet everybody, then whoever is the officers at that time are like the people who you think are the coolest people. Now that I work with him, I know that's not true.
Exactly. That's
He's kind of the worst.
what I
but-
was gonna say about Gung.
Oh,
Yeah.
I regret ever thinking Gung was cool.
Yeah.
Now you know better.
Now I know better.
Yeah.
At
That's
the
true.
time, they're your senpais. You're just another kohai.
Anime.
Yeah, that was pretty quick.
Mhm.
Beginning in podcast and me being a weeb.
hmm We've had to explain Naruto running to people for the past week
Is it
that
because of Area 51? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That'll date this.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that's really set apart the people who understand the whole context of that and the
Mhm.
people who don't have any idea what that means.
Right.
So
And
then,
the cool people from the uncool people.
yeah, pretty much.
Choose, decide yourself, audience, which is which that I'm talking about.
So, mhm.
The cool people will know what Naruto running is.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone not knowing.
There's a lot of people who had well, at least people who I work with who I think are relatively normal people, which when you're around artists for so long, you lose that context.
Yeah, there are normal people out there
Yeah.
that don't know this weeb shit.
I see.
Yeah. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
I guess I have to step out of the bubble.
Well, we were we were out of that bubble coming back from work on Friday on the train with a bunch of drunk assholes.
Oh my goodness.
after the Giants game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I always hear those war
Oh.
stories of Caltrain on Giants game days.
Yeah, we didn't know.
I'm still a little dumbfounded by what happened. Okay, one thing that Josh asks me sometimes is like, what would be in your personal like circle of heck? So it's like
Mhm.
it's not hell, it's heck.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about
And then
that.
like so we were on the Caltrain.
Heck is like a place for people who weren't like evil, but they were still like bad. So
Yeah.
you go to heck instead of hell.
And then we were on the Caltrain coming home after the Giants game. Like teenagers I mean, they must have been like maybe like from 18 to like 22,
Maybe, yeah.
and like two groups of these like teenagers just yelling at each other, but like
Young people are the worst.
and like
Yeah.
and drunk, so they're like
And
underage,
sports
and
fans.
and then they're like, oh, like I effed your sister, I effed your mom, I was 12 when I effed your sister. And,
Yeah,
like,
it was all this gross shit, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, man, I forgot that real people are like that in the
Yeah.
real world.
Yeah.
It's summertime now too, so
Yeah.
they're all
those
they're
kidlings
all
are out
day,
there.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I noticed it a couple weeks ago, and I'm just like, why is everywhere I go slightly more annoying? And I realized, like, oh yeah, all the theaters are always full of these teenagers who are out of school for the summer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now I'm less excited to go see a movie later.
yeah,
Anyway.
It'll be good.
yeah.
All right, why don't you take us through school, Tucker?
Okay.
Yeah, let's teach us some things.
Uh,
Or do you
I-
mean his story?
No,
I thought we were
his-
gonna learn.
No, his story. Well, let's like, how involved were you in art growing up?
I was really into animation, like always. Like every cartoon from the late 80s to early 90s, I was like super crazy into, and then way into video games, like all the way into school, which kind of led me to San Jose State. And then right after I graduated high school, like I lived in Modesto at the time, which is like, middle of nowhere, hours south of Sacramento, Central Valley town. And there was like this one Christian game studio out there that had, they did like this weird puppet animation thing. So when I was in school, I was like really in animation and applied for an internship there that I got. And it was fun to like learn 3D animation at that place and also get paid at the same time, which was really cool.
A paid internship.
Yeah, I know. It
Pretty
was
As a student,
good.
that's
different
crazy.
time. You
Yeah.
just have to go out to Modesto and find the one place that's looking for like 3 animators.
There you
In
go.
high school, right?
This was right after high
Right
school.
after.
So this is
Okay.
I was going to junior college at the
Mhm.
time. But then kind of like when that peaked out, sort of, where it was like, okay, like if this is a thing to really keep going forward with, I can't just stay at this one place in the middle of Modesto. So that's when I looked around for schools and went to found San Jose State, which is the one that I could afford to go to.
Mhm.
Got into that school, and then found out that no matter how much, like junior college, they're always like, you go there for a couple years and then you finish out at a regular school and you save a lot of money, unless you go to the specific program that we all went through, which is like, nope, it's 5 years for everybody, no matter who you are or what you know.
Maybe even longer.
Yeah. And I was fortunate that a lot of people were also experiencing the same thing. And one of the people I work with now, Jared Mills, it was like the exact same story. So he and I were like the slightly older guys going through school that were just kind of like really excited to be doing cool stuff though. And then I went to San Jose State from like 2009 to 2014 and met like a billion really cool people. Made enough connections to be fortunate enough to get a couple of cool jobs out of school.
Yeah.
Nice. Before we go into what those jobs were,
Yeah.
I want to jump back to early influences. You said like
Yeah.
late 80s, early 90s cartoons.
Yeah.
Top 3.
Top 3. Ninja Turtles is like immediate.
Fuck yeah.
I really like Mighty Max, but only
Mighty Max.
it was a show about this kid who had a hat, and the hat would project like portals to different dimensions in it or something, and like it was this whole crazy nonsense thing, and I only like kind of barely remember it. I remember the main villain actually had his lair in the kid's basement.
What the
It
hell?
made no sense, but like I remember really liking it. DuckTales was cool. Like I really liked
Woohoo.
DuckTales.
I wanted to do that, but I knew you would.
Yeah. Did you see so in the new series, do you know the moon theme from the NES DuckTales game? It's like this really
No,
it's this
I don't.
So like that was
I wish I did.
that was one of like the early like cross things of like, oh, a video game that I really love is also a cartoon I really love, which, back in the late 80s, early 90s never happened.
I wonder if this is going to be a thing
But
later. And we're going to hate it.
Yeah, they brought it back though. That there was this really awesome theme from one of the levels in the game that was very melodic and like beautiful. And then in the new DuckTales series, I guess whoever was directing or writing an episode was also a huge fan of the game. They took that song from the game and wrote lyrics for it.
Hell
And
yeah.
it was like that was the only clip from the new series that I've actually even seen. But it was
Really?
like the perfect amount of fan service for me.
I haven't seen the new
Um,
series.
I heard it was good. It looks really cool.
Yeah, that's
Disney's
what I
doing
heard
a
too.
lot of cool 2D animation stuff.
Oh. Disney? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
For TV shows, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're
For the movies, we're busy turning a cartoon into just real lions.
Yeah. Fortunately, the 2D stuff they're doing seems really cool. And then I would say, yeah, Ninja Turtles, DuckTales, and then kind of just like every other weird cartoon from that era. Like I don't really have a third one because like they all were like favorites at different times. But I think the original DuckTales
I can respect that.
and the OG Ninja Turtles kind of like constantly stay atop of like my fondest memories.
Man, I loved Ninja Turtles as a kid too.
Oh, it's so cool. The intro, like I'll watch that on YouTube sometimes still, and
Yeah.
it's like it's cool.
I love not every, but many remixes and renditions of that theme song.
Yeah. Oh. So I just came back from E3 with some friends last month, and like on the last hour stretch before we got back to the Bay, one of our like world builders, he like ripped my phone out of the microphone jack and put his phone in. He's like, check this out, and it was like a YouTube channel or a band or something that just takes 80s cartoon intro songs and makes them metal.
Yes,
And
we listened to the same album.
It was so cool.
I was like, that is right up Josh's alley.
It was
It
so
is because
cool.
I have that saved on Spotify.
Yeah, every single
It's
one.
like E-Rock or something like that.
I don't remember. I had no idea what it was. It like came into my life like suddenly, and like every song was great.
Yeah.
So.
I need to
Yeah, and the
check that
Teenage
out.
Mutant Ninja Turtles one starts out with like the metal one, and then like at some point they transition into the Turtles rap from the movie.
Oh, so
like
good.
the Go Ninja Go Ninja Go.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like just the delirium of being 6 hours in a car and then sitting in traffic,
It's
or
both.
yeah, I think it was actually good.
Yeah.
But then it was heightened because it was the end of a very long car trip.
All right. Okay.
I
got that question out of the way. Now we can get back into.
But now I need to ask, what about video games?
Oh, okay. Cool.
Oh yeah. What about video games? They're great.
Your early influence video games.
Oh man, the NES Ninja Turtles game was really good.
Mm-hmm.
People always rag on that, but it was really cool. It had a nice overworld that was very interactive, and then these really cool levels, and like playing the Ninja Turtles was really cool. So I had like multiple characters, which a lot of NES games didn't have a full package quite like that game.
Was that
did.
a beat 'em up?
It was a side-scroller beat 'em up
Okay.
with overworld segments that were top down that also had a little bit of combat in them. And then like if a turtle died, you could still go into the certain sub levels and rescue them, and like it was really hard because every game was really hard back then for reasons.
Yeah, because Nintendo.
Yeah,
That's how they did it.
But they did a really good job of kind of having a full feature set in a game before anybody really had a vocabulary of like what should they include in a game for it to feel like you're getting your money's worth. So that one was really great. Mario 3 for a long time was my favorite game of all time, and that one's still good. And like I played it again like 6 months ago, and it was fun. And then I don't know what a third one. Oh, Ninja Gaiden. Oh man.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
like the original.
Yeah. Because if you're like a kid in the 90s and you just like you're being shown Ninja Turtles and all these cool ninja things for like.
Ninjas
at that
were
point,
huge.
Yeah, and
That's
then, like,
right.
they were huge as far as I knew my entire life because I was like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And so I'd never known a time where ninjas weren't the coolest thing
Ninjas
in
were
the
just
world.
cool from like
Yeah.
the entirety of time.
Yeah, as far as I knew, that was true. And so there was this game that had a blue ninja, which was like blue is my favorite color, and like it had an awesome soundtrack, and you just like were jumping on walls and like climbing on walls and wall jumping on NES games was like the coolest feature a game ever had at that time. You know, it's like it's stupid, but like when something like that happens in a game and you're a kid and you're like, oh, I've never seen a game do that before. Like you feel so agile. It all came together to feel really cool. So I really liked that game.
Nice.
And I played that again recently, like 2 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love going back and just playing SNES games.
Yeah,
my
SNES
favorite.
games age better than NES games.
Yeah.
Only very few NES games age well at all. But yeah, there's some good ones.
Nice.
So were you drawing this whole time, like as a kid?
No, for a long time, like I would always draw. As far as I know, like as much as anyone else did. Like my mom was a bit of an artist and was always painting murals inside of our house, and I was always sketching with her.
Mm-hmm.
She did some really cool stuff, and like just because she wanted to, like no motivation other than she was like, our basement just doesn't have enough, and so she would spend like months just painting a mural on the wall, which was really cool. Upon reflection back then, I was just like, yeah, that's what mom does.
What kind? Like what would she depict?
So she grew up in Mexico, and so she like at one point installed a fountain in the basement of one of our houses,
Wow.
and then painted like this really pretty just mural of just like a Mexican town. So it was
Yeah.
like faked
Yeah,
perspective to look like
yeah,
there were streets and stuff. And like it had a really cool effect and like feeling of kind of being in a bigger place. Like the art itself, if you look at it, you know, like an art student, you'd be like, oh yeah, perspective's off or whatever, and like all that dumb stuff. But like to me, which was like I was essentially its only audience, and to her, it was just like a really cool thing that made a space feel much cooler. And so I was always around that. And she was always having me draw stuff with crayons. And just the regular amount in high school, like I was super into photography and animation, but drawing not too much. But I do love pixel art, and I still do that occasionally. But I was like really into computer stuff and photography for a long time, and then right after high school is when I got that internship I mentioned earlier and had the chance to actually learn some 3D animation software, which at that studio they used this thing called Lightwave, which is a cheaper package that is used in a lot of film and stuff, but it wasn't until school that I really learned Maya.
Cool.
Cool.
So Tucker,
Mm-hmm.
I heard that when you became librarian of the Shrunken Headman Club, that you really like revamped the library.
That sort of true. I mean, like that was a thing in progress from the previous people. So like, I think up to the 2 years prior, every librarian had done some stuff to kind of like get things ready to be improved. So like the year that I started getting involved with the club, that librarian had just picked up this massive collection of books from some guy who just came to our figure drawing sessions
Really?
for years, because you know like student figure drawing sessions usually get a pretty good deal, so we were like the cheapest place to get figure drawing in the South Bay. And that's true even living up in Oakland, like the Berkeley figure drawing clubs that they do there for those students is the cheapest thing that I could find anywhere in the East Bay. But this guy would always come to the Shrunken Head Man figure drawing sessions, and then he was getting too old, and like he had like a long career working in I think TV graphics or something. He had a couple of Emmys, so he had like this career in just this massive art collection. And he talked to the librarian at that time because he was looking to get rid of them, and so she and the officers of that year, and then me and a couple of other volunteers just went to like these storage lockers he had, which could be kind of shady, but he had like a ton of like 3 storage lockers full or something of just books.
Wow.
And like art books and things that
Crazy.
he had used as reference in like the 70s before he had the internet, so that
Wow.
was his reference. And so we just loaded up like this truck full of books and brought them to the school, and they just kind of stood in storage for a while. And then who was it? The librarian after that might have been Danny. Was it Danny Men maybe? But I think he had done a lot to kind of start getting them organized, and that was what he did for his year. And then the year that I took over was the year that we finally had like a room dedicated to it. So the year that I stepped in, we kind of just loaded everything up on the shelves, and like because of the work the previous two had done, we had like the system ready where they were all cataloged and they could be like checked out and we could track them. And so I kind of just got to come in on that year and take all the credit because that was the year that everyone got to start using it.
That's definitely how it is in my memory.
Yeah. And then I think who was it, Samia or somebody
Yeah.
took over afterwards, and definitely like seemed to run a much tighter ship than me. So I feel like I just got there at the right time, and everyone on either end of me actually did a much better job. But yeah, that's how that happened.
What did you focus on in school?
School was animation all the way. Like as soon as I got there, um, I grew to appreciate 2D art. I really like found the act of like rendering final pieces. I learned to appreciate that a lot. But since the reason that I went to San Jose State was to learn animation, and I felt very fortunate because I know a lot of people like weren't sure going into it or like thought they knew for sure, and then there was like, I don't know if that's what I want, and like they had to do a lot of soul searching, or like they went in knowing like any of it was cool and they would figure it out. But for me, I was like that was the only thing that interested me in that place, because I just wanted to make animation for games.
Nice. Yeah, it's an advantage if you just have that like clear goal.
Yeah.
You got a
No,
head
it's
start
funny.
almost.
Yeah, it's funny though. Like I'm doing production now instead, so I get to do a little bit of animation here and there. But I was so dead set on that, and then I was like, I actually ended up not quite doing that, but doing something that kind of feeds into why I enjoyed that as well.
Nice.
So
How did that happen?
Yeah.
How did that evolve?
Let's get that journey.
Yeah, so it's like a meandering story. But like in school, there was me and my friend Jared Mills, who were like we became friends probably right after our first year of school there, maybe right after the first semester. But we both knew we were into games and like we really dug games. And when we had started at San Jose State, the people who ran the animation illustration department hated games. They thought it was like an inferior art form, that it just kind of aped on things that movies did better and just try to emulate them. And like they were from a different generation, so like I kind of got it. And like when they held up any game, they're like, yeah, this is just trying to be a blockbuster, or like, you know, it looks good for a game, but like, you know, like it's clearly limited by hardware or whatever. And so to them it was just like, you're making a lesser thing and we're going to teach you how to make a better thing, so if you want to go into games, you'll have a skill set on how to make something even better if you choose to go that route instead. I thought that's a fundamentally flawed perspective, especially in a place that is full of people new people who are trying to learn new skill sets. But Jared and I didn't really care about that one way or another. We're like, we're going to figure out how to make games. And so like I think around our second year in, once we kind of like met everyone and kind of knew each other, we tried to kick off a game project. And that was around the time when things like Unity were becoming accessible to people who didn't know anything about making games. Unity is like a game engine that anybody can download, and it has it's kind of like Maya, where like the UI is understandable, not necessarily easy. And so we tried to make a game in that for about a year, and had like an interactive demo essentially, but it was something that looked really pretty, and like we felt good about it, even though it never got finished. And we solved a lot of like technical problems of like, how do you put 2D animation in a 3D space in a way that works and doesn't look weird. And then like we got that running, so you could like press a button, go down a rail through like a coffee shop essentially, and it was really cool. So when that went nowhere, when we kind of like peaked out on that, and we're like, we don't know how to make a game, we're artists, you know, we just want to get stuff that's in a game that's interactive. So then we tried to do another one, which was a mod in the Source engine, which was an engine that Valve puts out for free, and that's what they made Half-Life in, and it was a nightmare to work with. But we learned how to like make animations and load models into that engine and modify it to do the thing we wanted. And so we tried to make like this little horror game where like things would happen on scripted triggers. So it was like setting up little animations or events that would change things. And that one ultimately went nowhere either, but we got really far on it. And like we had a hard time meeting programmers for a while. So we were trying to do all of this stuff ourselves. And,
was this like just extracurricular, or was it for
this was our free time.
Yeah.
So it ended up, that horror one, I think, ended up being part, like for some of the 3D modeling classes, you can pick what you want to model and like run that by the teacher. And then I think some of the people did that for one of their modeling classes. They started working on our projects as part of their actual curriculum, because there is a lot of overhead of like, okay, you can make something look pretty, but how do you make it performant? Like, how do you make it not a ridiculously stupid high resolution that's much more than what someone would need? You know, try making it pretty with this limit of polygons, and then try to get it in the engine, which is always like this nightmare. Like there's an entire departments in studios that is just support for people getting their stuff into the engine.
Right.
There's a lot of handoffs that happen in projects like that, where people realize that they can't just focus on only the thing they do, but that they're receiving work from somebody who's handing it to them, and then they have to hand off their work to somebody else. And that has to go through all of those pipelines to become a finished project. And so after doing those two games, And it kind of became stressful when that second game became people's curriculums, because then we were naturally being given deadlines to do a thing that we still had no idea how to even do. So that ended up taking all of my time. I kind of spent more time managing people than doing animation. And so like I got into the program at this point, which halfway through San Jose State, you have to take like this portfolio review, and so you have to kind of like work really hard on your art up until that point to pass that. And then as soon as I got into that, I just spent all of my time managing people. So I was doing fine in my classes, but I was building no personal portfolio. So then by the time we got to the BFA, I was like, oh shit, I need to stop making games because I'm screwed at this point. And so then our final year, it happened to be that for whatever reason, the heads of our department decided that games were okay now. They were cool. And so
they finally had enough clout.
Yeah, and so they for whatever reason, despite hating games, they really liked me and Jared. And I think part of that was the son of one of the heads of their departments really loved games as well. And he ended up working on one of the projects with me and Jared. I think like through their connection with him, they kind of took another look at games. But then also that final year, our class, our school had this connection with UC Santa Cruz, because they had a
Santa Cruz.
That's my alma mater.
Really? Yeah. So that last year, their graduate game program, that they were all programmers and designers, and they needed artists, and so
and
like
they couldn't find them at Santa Cruz.
No,
that's for fucking sure.
So like they reached out to the heads of our department, or I don't know how that connection happened. We did this collaboration for our senior year where they were making games, and then we would spread out our artists among their different projects, and people would work on a game project together for part of their BFA. And since I had been spending like the last year and a half, 2 years just trying to manage people and artists working on game projects, I kind of oversaw all of that. But it was very fortunate timing, but some people hated it because not everyone wanted to work in games, and just me and a handful of other people. So some people were like, I should be working on my portfolio instead of doing this thing. But it somehow all ended up working out very fortunately for just me. So that's that's what led me to go from like animation, like 100%, to managing people working on games and game production, which is to me also really cool. It's just a different kind of problem. It's very stressful.
So were you continuing that like horror game mod, or did you do something that the Santa Cruz guys came up with?
So by the time the Santa Cruz thing started up, our horror game mod had wrapped up. Everyone kind of just drifted away from that. And then I wasn't making a game that final year for that project with Santa Cruz, but as soon as that one wrapped up, right before we all graduated, Jared, myself, the son of one of the heads of our program, and a couple other art and programming friends, we kicked off another project, which was like a very cutesy like mobile game we were trying to make something that wasn't like mobile games, but like something that we thought would be fun and silly. And that was the thing that we did for the next year and a half, I think, and it also went nowhere. But yeah, all these side projects, like it has to be like what you really 100% want to push through no matter what. And I think everyone was like, there are a number of compromises we made on each of the things. So eventually everyone ended up drifting away on all of them. But we all got to solve like really cool problems and take them further than we thought we would be able to. And they're great ways to learn, because you're just like making problems for yourself that no one would ever give you. And then years later, you might find like someone's asking you to do that same problem again. So all of the projects were really fun to work on and really cool demos, but they were mostly like the biggest benefit of them was personal growth, even if they never became like shippable things, which we never expected them to be anyway.
Cool. So when I was in school, I felt like I didn't have it in me to like explore, or like I didn't even like think it was a thing for me to like, if I had an idea, to maybe make it into a project or something. Like I only just went to class and like I did my homework, and like later on maybe I joined like another group project. But yeah, what advice would you give to someone who's like that? Because like as someone who like spearheaded your own project.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was exactly the same way. You just kind of have to like screw yourself over and like find like you kick the thing off, And then once you've realized like, oh shit, I'm committed to this now, then you can't not do it. And that's the only way I think anybody
like this
ever does.
podcast.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Like
The secret is to rope other people in. So yeah,
that's exactly.
then you can't let them down.
me
Like
and
this podcast.
That's what me and Jared needed. Like if I didn't have him, I would have just been like, oh, it's going nowhere. But I can hide away and no one will ever know.
Yeah.
But he was
done
there.
That. I've done that before. I
Yeah.
like started a project and be like, nobody knows this exists. I quit.
Yeah. And like we're naturally lazy, so you're like, oh, like what do I like? I could go outside today. That would be great.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great day. It's Saturday and it's the summertime. But I have this project, and so like I have to do it. And then you don't want to do the project, and if there's a way for you to get out of it, you'll probably take that out. But if you have something else that is committing you to it, like someone else depending on you, or like just the shame of people knowing that you quit.
Yeah. Tell
it's
people
also
you're doing
another-
it so that they know that when you quit.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's part of it. It's like the way that the first one got kicked off is like a friend of mine, Brian Mann, who's a storyboard artist down at in LA. I think Cartoon Network maybe now is where he's at.
Cool.
But like he and I were just really into games, and we were talking about games one day, and he's like a big kid, so he's like really energetic about anything he talks about. And so like I was talking to him about games, and like I got him really excited, and he's like, let's make a game. And then like he kind of dragged me into it, and then it got far enough along that like I had to keep going, and then he moved away, so I was stuck with it. But like he was incredibly helpful because like he was just excited for whatever, so he let me kind of do all the pitching and the wrangling for the game. And so by the time he left, and like we had a couple people on board, like Jared was like the first person that we talked to about it as well. By the time there's a couple people on board, he was already gone, and I was just bound to it. But it was also my thing because he let me do all the pitching. So it was a great kind of like kickoff that he gave me without realizing it. And then at that point, I was like screwed because I couldn't stop because I was like, oh, I got lazy. Everyone go home today. We're done. I can't do that. So that was how the first project happened. And then it's weird because you feel like a failure when the thing goes nowhere. But then by the time like we wanted to do the second thing, like everybody I knew in school who was in class with me that I thought would just like were way better artists than I ever would be and would never want to do a dumb side thing that I wanted to do. When I was ready to do the second one, I was like, hey, do you guys want to help work on a game? Everyone was like, fuck yeah, that first thing you did looked really cool. How did you do that? And I was like, oh, I don't know, but let's figure it out. And so it's weird, like you doubt yourself more and you're way less impressed with what you did than other people who are really talented around you may think. So yeah, it's worth asking and getting other people into it and having somebody who's very excitable to help kick you off on that stuff. But yeah, I have good people around me. Yeah.
You just gotta say why not.
Exactly.
Find you a Brian Mann, make you excited about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why did you add the tactile sensors to these? Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Just always assume you're being recorded.
Yeah. Government.
Yeah.
Tucker,
Hello.
so where do you work now?
Double Fine. Well, Microsoft. No, just kidding. Double Fine, but we are soon to be acquired by Microsoft.
Ooh.
How was that process?
Ongoing. It has not affected us at all, aside from the fact that constant overbearing stress of where the money is going to come from to finish the project is gone. So what I was most attracted to about Double Fine when I started there was that they were independent and like the independent studio that has done all right for itself and been around for a long time, and still made like very quirky things that you would at the time only really associated with independent games. I think the acquisition by Microsoft was something that took adjustment or is taking adjustment from a lot of people that work there. And I certainly get that from all points of view. Like the independent ideal is something that I think everybody kind of holds up. It's like, you know, the American cowboy ideal where it's just like, yeah, it's a romantic thing. And it's like, it's just cool. And it's amazing when people are independent.
Yeah.
But,
or for anyone who doesn't know, what are some games that Double Fine has come out with?
So our first and probably biggest game is called Psychonauts, which came out on the original Xbox in like 2005, and we are making a sequel to that now. And then our other biggest game is called Brutal Legend, which was like a metal game that came out on the Xbox 360.
Brutal Legend.
Brutal. There's an umlaut.
There's an
that
umlaut.
is
I don't know how
very
to say
important.
it. Yeah.
And that is a game that is like all heavy metal themed, and it was very big with a very different crowd. And all of our games are kind of like different. Like every game has a pretty hardcore and big following, but of people who do not overlap with any of our other games. So we made another one called Connect Party, which was incredibly popular. I never had a Connect, so I never played it, but apparently it was like the best Connect game that a lot of people ever played. So I do want to go back and play it one day.
Yeah. Find a Connect. That's a challenge.
So I do have one now.
Oh.
My roommate, she got a used Xbox One that came with a Connect, and as far as I can tell, all it does is lets me tell Siri or Cortana to turn on the Xbox.
Yeah.
So I do use it for that.
It's most of its functionality.
Yeah. And then I think our other biggest games are one called Stacking, which is on the 360, which is about those Russian dolls that you can walk around and consume other characters to get different things. And then Costume Quest, which just became a cartoon that's on Amazon Prime.
Whoa! I'll check that out.
So
yeah,
we have a smattering of games that kind of go across the board.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time it had been a very independent company, and then at E3 this year at their press conference, Microsoft announced that they were going to acquire us. And on the one hand, like being independent is a really cool, beautiful ideal, and it's like it is something that in its own way has a lot of appeal for being a thing that allows you a certain amount of freedom. On the other hand, funding was always a thing that took a lot of our CEO's time and a lot of our senior management's time of like, hey, here's a really great game and it sounds very quirky and it's very unique, but we're not making the thing that's going to be the biggest blockbuster, but still, how would you like to give us a lot of money? That is a thing that takes a lot of time from a lot of people who have a lot of connections, and they were always hustling for money to make sure that everybody who works on the games can stay focused on just working on the games and not trying to like fund the company. And now that we're getting acquired, it's like we know where the money's coming from indefinitely, which then allows everybody to worry just about making the games.
That's good feeling.
Yeah, so it's a trade-off between like an ideal and what is best for us to be allowed to make the kind of games we want. Mm-hmm. And so far, everything we've heard from Microsoft, including other things we've heard from other studios that have been acquired from Microsoft, because they've been doing this thing for the past couple of years where they acquire smaller studios to make games for them. Everyone's been saying they've been totally hands-off. They're like, we bought the studio to make the games that we knew they already made. We just want them to support them doing that.
So you get best of both worlds. Hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. I think I have a healthy amount of skepticism, which is just to say, like, I want them to prove it. Mm-hmm. I don't want to like wholeheartedly trust them, but I do like everyone that I've talked to so far about it. And so far they've been saying all the right things. So I would say I'm optimistic about it.
Cool. So what's your like day-to-day look like?
So at Double Fine, I'm a producer on Psychonauts 2. And I'm the producer specifically for the animation and characters departments, with a little bit of tangential stuff in between. A large portion of that is planning out sprints and scheduling the work for characters and animation. One of the things like that you don't really get a sense of, that I never got a sense of in school and only got a very small glimpse of on those game projects that I did in school, was how the handoff works between different departments on any big project. And so a lot of what I'm doing is helping the characters and animation teams plan out their work so it makes sense with where the level teams are at. So we're not trying to do like a cutscene or animation for characters in a level that hasn't even started yet. You know, we're trying to keep everybody busy, but lay out the work to where it works with other departments.
Right, which is important.
It is important.
Yeah, there's a big difference in how it feels when that's done well or not.
Yeah. And for numerous reasons, there are times where we'll have to be like, hey, we need to, due to outsourcing obligations or things like that, we'll be like, hey, we need to send out this scene in this many weeks, and you guys don't know what that level even is yet. How do we make that work? And so there have been a lot of times where it's like the level's just barely far enough along, and we're like, okay, well, we know this scene's going to take place here. So what if you guys just gave us like a footprint that we can use and block out the scene in that space? And then we'll send that out to animation. And then when you guys get there, we'll work to make sure that everything we need doesn't block you from doing what you need to do to make the level good, but that you also don't make us throw away that cutscene that we paid a lot of money for.
Right.
And it is very weird where like something that is creative but also has deadlines, you have to make some commitments and like push some things forward just to keep on schedule. And because like we work with outsourcing for our cutscenes, which means the final animation is done by this really awesome studio in Canada called Squeeze. And they have a lot of animators they need to keep employed as well. So we make obligations of like, we're going to send you this many seconds of layout animation that you can animate on these months. And so we're trying to like make sure that we can keep them fed and that we're paying them to do this stuff so they can pay their animators, and then making sure that we don't commit to something that our teams internally can't do. And so there's been a lot of like, oh shit, like how do we make that work? Because some things are taking longer than expected.
Oof. What a balancing act.
I know. I'm like getting
I'm
a little
stressed.
bit.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little stressed.
I've been stressed for like 2 years straight now.
Because being below that on like the rung of like organization or whatever, you only kind of hear that, and you're like, I'm just an artist. I'll just keep doing the work that they give me.
We get to just keep our heads down and like. And we're just always like amongst each other, but like are you working with like a ton of different like personalities and stuff?
Yeah, we got a couple. We got a couple for sure. But I think part of this role as well is to make sure that the artists and the teams can just focus on making the thing that they do as good as they can make it. So hopefully people don't feel the stress besides myself. And that
Admirable.
feels good.
Yeah, it's such a like a...
I mean, if it's well planned, or like you have a way of dealing with problems as they come up, like I've learned that it doesn't need to be as stressful as I'd made it for myself. Like there will always be a problem. A problem will always come up, no matter how well you plan it out, no matter how many people you get to sign off on the plan. Something's like, you can't figure out the whole thing ahead of time. Like, so when something comes up, you just kind of need to understand that there's a way to solve it or to change it. And like, if you can kind of keep a level head when it comes to that stuff, then it always works out. Sometimes things have to work out in a way where you throw away a little bit of money or a little bit of work that you paid for. And if that is a necessity to make the project good, then that is still the right choice. So you shouldn't stress out about that too much. But it's a lot of things to keep an eye on. There's a lot of plates that you have to keep spinning, or else they go crashing down.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, it is. It's like a fun puzzle that you can't solve. It's just like you can just temporarily solve it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you enjoy it, so.
Yeah, it is cool. Like I came from a bigger studio before coming here, and like every department had like its own production staff. And here on this game, there is only 4 producers for 60 people, and some of them are incredibly specialized and do like one thing. And so like the departments that I run would have an entire staff of production on them. And for me, on this game, it's just me. So it's like, it's fun to kind of have that really detailed experience that I got from my last place, but then to step back and be like, okay, there's a much higher level of problem solving to do here in order to keep everyone busy and working in the correct order. And it is really cool, because then it's like running an animation project that's within a game. And so like producing we have 2 hours of cutscenes essentially in our game. And I'm the lone producer for that. So like it's like I get to produce a feature film with all these other problems in them alone. And not alone, because there's this whole creative team on there, but I am the one planning producer on it. And that is a really fun problem. Like I always wanted to produce a feature. Like I love animation, so I get to produce a feature that is inside of a really cool video game that I also happen to be a fan of. Like that is a great problem to have. It's very stressful. I don't know why anyone would give me that responsibility. As far as I know, all I did was ask for it. But I never think that no one ever thinks they're qualified to do the thing. They're just like, oh God, I've like I was saying earlier, like you just get yourself committed to a thing and then you can't back down from it at that point. So it's cool. It's a weird problem to have, but like a cool weird problem to have.
Yeah. What was your experience like finding jobs after college?
I was stupidly fortunate. I know a lot of people who are way more talented than me, spend a long time looking for work, but I was fortunate enough to know a lot of very friendly people and somehow get on enough people's good sides that every step of the way somebody helped me out to get the next thing. Before I even graduated, Dave Chai, one of our teachers, who knew I was doing all of this production stuff, submitted me for an internship at Pixar, and then that I didn't hear about for a long time. And then during school, when we were doing the stuff with UC Santa Cruz, those game projects, Bunny, one of the heads of our program, who hated games, was talking to John and Brenda Romero, who headed the UC Santa Cruz project. And are both kind of legendary game designers. Right. John Romero is known as for being the designer of the original Doom, among other games. They were running that project, and like Bunny was just talking me up during one of our meetups, and like they offered me an internship on the spot there. So as soon as I graduated, I started my internship. Or no, that was actually the Christmas before I graduated. The winter break, I interned with the Romeros on a mobile game at the studio they had at the time called, I think, Romero Games, or no, Loot Drop. And then I entered there, and then they asked me to kind of stay on and just kind of be an employee there after the internship, which was already like an incredibly huge win because I wouldn't graduate for 6 more months. And then that Pixar thing finally came back, and they wanted me to do that internship. So then I took that, and I worked there for a year and a half, and was fortunate enough to be in the characters and animation departments, which then right when the movie I was working on was wrapping up, a spot happened to open up at Double Fine that I thought I wasn't qualified for. And then my friend Jared, who I did all those game projects with in school, was working at Double Fine and just yelled at me to apply until I did. And then I got that. So somehow it's like, Bunny being really nice and talking me up to the Romeros, that teacher forcing me to submit an application to a Pixar internship. And I don't think he even told me he wanted, like, he was going to submit it. He was just like, hey, send me your your resume. So I put one together really quick, and then he sent that off. And then Jared yelling at me to apply to this job that I have now just kind of happened to work out very well. And I feel like an asshole for that because
No.
everyone works so hard after school, and I pivoted to this production thing based on what I was doing in school, and then just people kind of helped me out.
Yeah, but you set yourself up for that.
Yeah. I mean, everybody does, a certain amount of work. But I don't think I can also deny that I am incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes both of those things.
Yeah.
We've talked about it plenty on the podcast before.
This
is how it has to be sometimes. This is how it works. And you can't
There is an equation, yeah. You just gotta, you work hard, you're a good person to work with, and then...
So people will like you.
You just wait for that luck to come around.
Yeah, don't be an asshole is a very important one that can't be stressed enough. Because there are also talented people who have less luck because they have burned a lot of bridges.
Exactly. When there's the very talented person who nobody likes to work with versus the person who's still talented, maybe not as talented, but... hey, I would really like to work with that person because there's a great personality. Guess who they're going to hire?
Yeah.
Guess who they're going to go with?
Yeah. Every game is made with a team. And so if it's somebody who can be a good part of a team, I think people will go with that person.
Yeah. So to the audience who is taking advice from the show, don't be an asshole.
Don't be that.
Yeah. Be cool. So did you ever imagine starting out your journey is in an animation department or animation program, that you would end up in a production role? Could you have even imagined that as a possibility?
Maybe as a way of getting a foot in the door, because a lot of people do that. A lot of production interns that I worked with at Pixar, I saw went back later to be a story intern or an animation intern. Which is really cool because part of any entertainment industry or any industry is hustling to get your foot in the door.
I've seen it go the other way too, where there's somebody who started out as an artist and ended up liking managing people or whatever and ended up in production instead.
Yeah. I think it varies on what people's temperaments are and what they find they like doing. And even when I was an intern at that small studio in Modesto, my bosses were making me kind of train the new interns from early on and kind of like wrangle them and kind of set the production schedules for that stuff because we were just so short staffed. And that was stuff I really liked doing because like to me, like my goal in school with those game projects, I thought it was always really evident, was like I wanted to lead a project. And failing to ever finish any of them, I realized like I don't know how to lead a project. Like I really wanted to animate, but I don't know how to finish it. Like I don't know what is needed or what all the moving pieces are. And then my reasoning was if I stayed an animator, I could work really hard to be a good animator. Like I would never be a great animator, but I could work hard to be a good animator, and I would understand animation better and better and better. But I wanted to learn everything because I wanted to lead a project, and part of that is knowing how to communicate with everybody on the team.
Right.
And like I didn't know anything about design or programming or any of the other disciplines. And I'm fortunate now to be positioned into a spot where I have to talk to everybody. And like while I focus on the character and animation departments, I have to know like how anything I schedule with them affects or is dependent on any of the other departments. So I feel like I just kind of get, even if I'm not doing the other work directly, I understand how it all affects each other, which to me just helps me kind of get a clearer idea of what all the moving parts are, which is just cool to learn.
Yeah.
I just like big projects. It's amazing anything ever gets made.
Yeah.
When you made that shift, like in school, was it an actual like was it just a gradual thing, or was it like something you had to sit down and like think about and commit to?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was like, oh shit, I don't have a portfolio and I have a year left. But then a big chunk of it was like, you know, I have a year left and I can pull it together in a year. Like a lot of people didn't use stuff that they made before their graduating year because they had gotten better by then. And like I did have to sit and think for a while of like, okay, I can spend the next year like trying to do what I came here to do and make a really great portfolio to try to be an animator, which I would be perfectly happy doing because that's anybody is super fortunate to be an animator. And you know, enough places are looking for animators to do, like everything has 3D animation now. So it's a skill that I think depending on where you're willing to hustle, you could find work in. But it was like I could do that and focus on trying to stay employed as an animator, or I could try this thing where I think I can get to learn all these other things as well. And for me, like leading a big project of my own was kind of always the end game. So being in a spot where I could understand better everything involved in it and how to communicate, because like communicating with the other people who do this stuff better than you is like the most useful thing. And understanding how to give them direction or give them input based on what your needs are is something a lot of people don't know how to do. And so when I realized like production is a place where I have to talk to everybody, and even if I don't understand how they do what they do, understand how it affects everything else, and how if you make a request of them, how to communicate it in a way that they can understand what you want. And I was like, that production is the best place where I can get all that info. Otherwise, I would be an animator trying to look over the fence to see what other people were doing and how they work. Whereas here, like my job is to constantly look over the fence at everyone. So it's weird though, because it's not like I don't get to do anything cool myself. Like I don't make any of the cool stuff. Like that is a compromise that I think I have to learn to live with. And
you facilitate all the cool stuff to get finished.
And that's cool.
Yeah. It was like our department did this, but it's not like I did this. Right. So it's like I have to be okay with that. And I totally am, because I was like, yeah, man, like we all, like everybody did their part in making this thing get into the game and look great. And it's like, if you go down the list and you're like, oh, they did this and this person did this person did this, I'm never part of that group where it's like, oh yeah, I did this thing. I get to do that a little bit at Double Fine. Like I get to poke around at stuff when there was a little bit of downtime and everyone's just working. I'll get to bring stuff into the game. But overall, like I'm not that person. But I understand what everyone did to get that thing cohesively into the game, which I find just on a curious level very satisfying.
Cool. Does that do you have any like side projects personal projects going on in your life?
Not right now. This is probably the first time since school that I haven't had one, and that's just because like being a producer on a AAA game, I feel like I would not be able to fulfill my responsibilities to that if I was like focusing half my attention on something else. And I tried to do like a documentary film with a friend a year and a half ago. And then I realized like I have to be thinking about that when I'm at work and then come home and work on that. And like I couldn't commit to that in the way that that person needed. So that kind of like fell apart. That's when I kind of realized like, yeah, if I'm really going to be focused on a game of this scale, and really we are a little production understaffed for this game, then I need to be thinking about this game when I go home and not be thinking about something else while I'm at work. This is the first time I've been like satisfied focusing on this game. But then like as soon as this is done, maybe like if I can convince some other folks to do a side project, I might look into that. But right now, actually, Double Fine, they do this thing called Amnesia Fortnite about every other year at this point, which is everyone at the studio takes 2 weeks off of doing anything related to the games we ship, and we all pitch games. And then through different processes each year, they pick a handful of the games, and everybody just works on those games for 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
How can we get that to happen idea?
We can try. We can certainly try.
It's a hard sell because it's like, okay, the entire company has to be on payroll for 2 weeks, but they're not making anything for you.
That's a really hard sell.
Yeah.
That sounds like a special place.
We have a game jam day.
We do?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah, you weren't here.
One day.
They more tech companies seem to be doing this, or they have like what's it called, like 20% time or 10% time or something, where like they carve out some amount of time for people to do side projects with the understanding that if they do that, those people will learn skills that they will help them be better at the stuff that they're making for them.
Yeah.
But it has to be a place that either really believes that they will get some benefit from that, or they have the means to try that out.
Right.
And like Double Fine has always been we started doing this in like, they did it in like 2007, I think, when they started doing it during the Brutal Legend period. And it was a hard sell because they didn't have a lot of money even back then. But a lot of those games ended up being stuff that we would commercially release. And so like when one of our games got dropped by a publisher, and we needed to go start shopping around other stuff because they owned the license to the game they dropped, so we couldn't take that and try to get someone else to publish it for us.
Oh, that sucks.
They pulled all of the Amnesia Fortnite prototypes and tried to get someone to publish those, and I think that's where that game stacking came from.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
So it has tangibly benefited us, but it's still, even to this day, a hard sell because it's like, hey, we got 60 people on payroll now, and so just pay them for 2 weeks
to do something else.
Yeah. But everyone's really excited about it. And on a game of our size, we've been working on Psychonauts for I've been on it 3 years now, and like people get tired and like they get not creatively stagnant, but they're like, I just need to like
a little bit burned out.
Yeah,
I need to change the scenery.
Yeah,
I was about to say like that's probably like a lot of its benefits probably in like the morale department of just like. You get a breath of fresh air doing something else, and then everybody gets back to the project and they have like new energy.
Yeah, everyone got so excited. Like we were in a good stride on Psychonauts at this point, but everyone got so excited, and like as soon as they announced when Amnesia Fortnite was gonna happen, or at least the window where it would happen, that like the next week everyone's like at Carla's place, they hosted a pitch session for everyone at work, and they're like, everyone come over, let's just like pitch ideas to each other, and then they'll give you feedback, and then like well, you can just gauge everyone's reaction, and so everyone's just like excited to be like, what can I try to excite you with? Like, what idea can I pitch that you guys would want to see? And it's a different kind of creative energy that people haven't been able to flex in a couple years.
So cool.
Yeah.
Amnesia Fortnite's a very confusing name, though, because those are names of video games.
I was going to make that joke, too, but I didn't want to break the stride.
That are very different.
You play Amnesia and Fortnite.
Yeah. I thought that's where you're going, and I was like, that's really weird.
I was like, he can't be saying that. He can't be. Did it 2 weeks to play Fortnite.
Yeah, but now we can just kind of like bank on the popularity of those games.
Oh yeah.
Some people look up those two games, they'll find our thing as well.
All intentional.
Yeah. We'll pretend it's
if they're Googling both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, now I wonder who would Google both of those. They're so different. It's gotta be a
It's gotta be
real
at least
weird
one.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody with
It's
like
the internet.
very strange tastes.
Weird people exist.
One
That's
night
true.
I was playing Amnesia and it was like storming outside.
That's the best time.
And then like
Did
I
you
look.
turn the lights too?
Yes, their lights were off. I was playing with RJ and like a couple other friends. And then we look out my window, like second story window, and like my neighbor, for some reason, just walks out into the middle of the court. Like, and no shoes on, just in his socks. And
Guy's
just
on
like.
meth.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Hey.
You go outside, not even barefoot, but in your socks.
In your
you
socks.
are on drugs.
Yes. Yes.
I think he was just like a weird, like, romantic teenager, and he's like, the storm, like, let the rain fall on my skin.
I don't
That's
care
some-
about any of that stuff. The fact
Yeah.
that there were socks and
That is
That's
an
the part of the-
alien wearing human skin.
yeah, they haven't figured out our ways yet.
Yeah.
You get wet socks. Are you
Yeah.
crazy? Take out your socks.
Did you ever see what was that Elijah Wood movie, The Faculty, where like it's the alien slugs and they really like water and like
No.
that's what that dude is.
No.
I've never even heard of this.
Oh yeah, and it had an Usher in it. And,
What the fuck?
Yeah, it was like a big teen horror movie about an alien invasion from like
Alright.
'98 maybe.
Oh,
It was like a '90s movie, but
okay.
it was it was a hot thing for a hot minute.
Gotcha. Pre Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's when Elijah Wood was just like some teen actor.
Anyways, speaking of corny movies like that, I don't know if it's corny, but this one is. The Apple. I've been trying to get people to watch it. I've
Uh-huh.
only watched it once in college, and I've never been able to convince another group of people to watch this with me again. And it's like a musical,
Yeah.
like a
I'm out.
rock opera kind of thing. No. Give it a second.
Apple?
Yeah, and it's based on like the Adam and Eve story, kind of.
Okay.
But it's like set in like the 80s or something like that, and it's just bonkers, man. It's like a rock opera, like I said, and some really interesting songs are in there. It's like a dystopian world that like set in semi-futuristic setting, and like everyone, like society is all centered around like this entertainment phenomenon.
Oh, you're talking about Cats, the new musical
No.
that's coming out soon, right?
We can talk about Cats in just a second. Anyways, the Apple's great. The devil is like a businessman, obviously, and there's like a lot of like very overt references to Adam and Eve, and the ending is just bonkers. And
Is this real?
this is real. Like you can watch the trailer and be like, that can't be a film, but it is.
There are many trailers I've been seeing lately where I'm like, this can't be a film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks well. Yeah. Okay. So we can talk about Cats now on that subject. What is happening with CGI? Let's just take
What was that quote? Could you say that science quote again?
the science quote. Oh, from Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's your scientists were so obsessed with whether or not they could, they never stopped to ask whether or not they should. And that's exactly what I said after watching the Cats trailer.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, it's gonna be great.
what
It's
has
gonna be
science done?
great.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
gonna have to
all
watch it.
wrong,
I'm gonna
and
have
it's
to-
gonna be a great movie.
Somebody pointed out something pretty like salient. Like, what's going on? We had the Sonic trailer, we had the Cats trailer, and we had there's one more CG movie. God damn it, what was it? Maybe it was Lion King.
Maybe.
Yeah. But it's like, what's going on?
Yeah, everyone's really disappointed in Lion King because it's like a shot-for-shot remake in a lot of ways.
Is it actually? I'm not sure yet.
I saw
Is it
it.
out?
It's out.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. I don't think
Okay.
I will, but I saw a clip from it.
I mean, I think
that
I've already
was-
seen it.
Yeah. The clip I saw was almost verbatim. Like they said the same words in the same order with the same shots from the 2D movie.
Okay,
And
that's
I
what I
was like,
thought it was gonna be.
Why are you guys erasing like people? Like all you're doing is like a new generation of kids. When you ask them about the Lion King, they're gonna think about this movie.
Yeah,
But
they're
then
gonna.
like, why don't you just show them the old movie, which was very deliberately made with those shots in mind, with the medium that it was made in.
Yeah.
But they all make a lot of money whenever they release them, so I don't know.
They're never gonna stop.
I feel like they have it down for the movies they make will for sure have an audience, and so there's somebody getting entertainment from it, and I guess I can't judge that.
I guess. Well, let's see what they do with Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh,
that a thing?
I don't think they're gonna do that.
That's Disney, right?
That's Disney.
Oh,
yeah.
I thought there were plans though. Are there plans?
They're gonna run out of the good ones eventually.
There is a big talk.
That is a good one. on.
People were talking about that at work though, and like they seem like they're kind of disowning that one. Like they make no reference to it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, will they do it? Will they remake this one once they run out of everything else?
Is it because Frollo was like too creepy and like Esmeralda is too sexy or something?
She's too sexy. Isn't that like part of the plot? Is
Yeah.
That, or like there's a song about how she's too sexy or
Yep.
something like that?
Yes,
I barely
there is.
remember the movie, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're like, man, what were we? This isn't what we are anymore. Like, we can't even sell this to ourselves. Yeah, man. But
Mulan looks like it could be good though.
I haven't seen the trailer for that yet.
It looked.
I heard it's not a musical though. I heard there's no because that doesn't sell in China.
I don't remember. They
Is that
played.
so?
They played in the newest trailer. They played one of the song, like the rhythm of the song, one of the songs from the old.
But I
old
bet
movie.
you this is what I've heard. So I think it's like maybe they'll do that, but the characters will not be singing like it is a Disney musical or whatever. They're not gonna,
It won't be a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which disappoints me. Maybe you're happy about that. Maybe I don't know.
The tone of it looked
Well,
like
it's
it would
really
be more of
it's
a
supposed to be serious,
epic.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looked like an epic with action in it.
That's what Gung
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
He said it looked like a modern Chinese cinema.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any. Wait, have I seen any of these remakes since Beauty and the Beast?
I haven't even seen Beauty and the Beast.
I never finished it either because I was just like.
What was the big one? I feel like one of these remakes was like a huge hit.
Aladdin?
No, I don't
People
think
were
that-
saying Aladdin was good.
I heard
Cinderella?
The Cinderella one, a lot of people forget.
Oh.
I'm one of them. Fucking,
Yeah.
they made Cinderella.
Yeah, they did.
They're doing another live action remake of Cinderella.
What?
Yeah, because the first one was like 10 years ago now, I think.
That was 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Wait,
that
we're
was like,
old.
That was like the first Disney remake before they really did the remake
listeners,
train.
I'm old. I hurt my knee and I'm like,
'Cause
my body's beginning to betray me.
That Cinderella
And this is
one.
cementing this.
and I can't eat dairy anymore.
Yeah.
The first Cinderella one had Rob Stark as the prince.
What
in it.
the fuck?
Yeah.
How come I not
That's
remembering?
Yeah,
any
I
of this?
totally
That's
forgot
right.
about
Yeah.
that until I looked up because I knew I saw it and I had no memory of it. I would just like when they announced they're doing another Cinderella live action, I was like, I could have sworn I saw that. So then I went and looked it up and was like, yeah, I saw this whole movie, and even I don't remember it, even though I know I saw it. But we'll see. I don't know. They're remaking everything.
They'll
They're
get through
making
them all
money.
eventually. They have to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Disney knows how to make money, so.
Yeah. Also,
I'm-
it's like a thing with like if they don't keep making it, they lose license to some of the stories or something like that.
I don't know how it works.
I
All
heard
I know is
something
Disney.
about that. I don't know. I'm an artist.
Disney.
I'm not even a production manager or whatever.
They have a history of changing copyright law to suit them, so
That's
I
true.
don't think they're worried about
They're
that.
never gonna lose the mouse.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be in
By now, yeah.
by now in public domain or whatever, but he's not.
That was when they changed copyright law.
That's
It's supposed to
crazy.
run out. What was it, like 80 years or 100 years or something? From
You
when
can
a thing
always
is
tell
created.
when something enters public domain because everybody starts making movies out of it.
Yeah.
Isn't that what happened with Sherlock Holmes? Which is why we have so many Sherlock Holmeses.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
It's like
fascinating.
Yeah.
copyright law is very outdated. And like very broken, but
yeah.
it is kind of fascinating to learn because you're like, oh, that's why this studio did this thing because they needed to use it
Yeah.
to re-up the law. And yeah, there's stuff like that happens a lot. There was like Wheel of Time had like a pilot that aired at like 2 a.m. on HBO or something.
Wheel of Time did?
Yeah, and this was like 8 years ago or something, maybe
Huh.
7 years ago.
I didn't know about Wheel of Time back then.
And
so.
it was like when it was like peak Game of Thrones time, and like
that would have been the easiest time to sell it.
and everyone was talking about Wheel of Time, and then like everyone was like, what happened? But there was like this pilot that aired at 2 a.m. and it was terrible, and like it came out later that like they only did that because they wanted to keep the license for it, and they had to actually air a episode of it, so they just made this terrible thing and aired it when they knew no one would see it,
That's bananas.
so that they could keep that license.
Holy-
Wow. So can we expect more Wheel of Time stuff?
Only when they can figure out how to make it entertaining to the masses.
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't continue it after the first book.
Yeah, I don't read much fantasy, so I don't know. We'll
I'm
see.
a big
I just
buff.
read Dune though. I'm very excited for
I'm
that
in
movie.
the middle of reading Dune because
It's-
people finally kept talking about it so much. I'm
Yeah.
like, fucking fine, I'll read Dune.
Yeah.
I also am not enjoying it.
Yeah, this is like
I'm not enjoying it, but I still want to design the still suit stuff because
It's
I haven't
cool.
seen any of it, like
Oh, really?
interpretations of it. So I feel like I could blank slate, come up with my own idea, then finally look it up and compare it to what other people have come up with.
That's cool.
That's my current idea of my next like sci-fi design thing.
That's cool. The still suits are really cool.
It's an interesting concept. I mean, the whole thing, I can get how conceptually, like, it's still such a big deal. Like, it started out.
Mhm.
It's like when was it published? Do you remember? Off the top of
I
your
feel
head?
like it's from the 70s.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like a lot of fantasy sci-fi like tropes that maybe was like really early on with, and like it still carries on today.
Yeah, it's set
I
a
just
lot of that stuff.
don't like the guy's writing style,
It's different. I had to acquire the taste for
I
that.
suppose.
I normally don't read like fantasy stuff, and I feel like he's writing sci-fi like it's fantasy.
That's what I get too, and I read a lot of fantasy, and that's how it feels.
And I think that's also emblematic of sci-fi from that era that he was writing it. So I kind of had to like, as I was reading
That's
it,
true.
remember it's a 50-year-old story now.
Yeah,
From
like
a
Star
guy.
Wars.
Yeah.
Like, that was the sci-fi fantasy of the time.
Yeah. That this came out, I think, within a decade of the first Star Wars, like beforehand. So it's kind of like what tastes were at the time. But it was a cool book. It was different than what I normally go for, and especially what I normally expect from sci-fi.
Right.
But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Now I've been saying "Fear's the mind killer." a lot,
Yeah. That's the line.
particularly when playing Smash Brothers.
Against Ganondorf.
Against Ganondorf.
I mean, Smash Brothers is basically the Dune of the Nintendo world.
That's
Yeah, it's just a
real
Stark
stretch.
game.
What
It's a
is
Stark
that?
game.
What is
It's
that?
about Mario becoming like the Christ figure of this universe. Actually, it's Kirby, because everyone but
Oh,
Kirby
yeah,
dies. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right,
So
yeah.
Kirby is really the Christ figure in there, and
of Smash Brothers Ultimate. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah. Don't think about it. It makes sense if you don't think about it.
Yeah, just accept what we're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea what a still suit is, but
Here, let me describe the concept to you.
It made me think of like Death Stranding for some reason.
You know
Oh,
what?
that's coming out.
Oh, dude, I can't wait for that.
I don't know what.
I don't know why I want it, but I want it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like watching the trailer and I was like, no, I don't want to watch the trailer.
Yeah, I want to be
Yeah.
as like I have seen enough. I haven't seen all the trailers. I haven't seen all the footage or whatever. Because yeah, I also want to not know. But I'm like, I could watch all the footage and still be confused.
Probably, yeah.
But if I don't watch all of it, I can be more confused when I play the game, and I think that's perfect.
I'm really curious about is like the past 5 years has been like maybe a little bit longer, has been this big trend towards iconic game developers setting out on their own and like leaving the companies that kind of made them
Yeah.
big, or at least changing up the process through things like Kickstarter or just becoming independent.
Right.
And that has been hit or miss for a lot of famous designers. And I'm very curious how Kojima does without the structure of Konami.
That's true. This is going to be the first test of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
This
they
is
got a
his first
cool
game.
mascot, so far they're doing pretty well.
That's true. Yeah.
I love that mascot.
So far, it seems like everything that everyone loved from the Metal Gear series that like was just absurd and bizarre and entertaining is gonna be retained in this.
I hope so.
But
That's what it seems like. Yeah.
hopefully, it's also fun.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who else has been setting out on their own?
There's the Mega Man creator.
That's right.
and he
That
did
was one of
Mighty-
those misses, right?
That was a big miss. That was
Yeah.
Mighty Number 9.
Yeah.
And that was tough because like I still do like that guy, but like I'm curious whether he took more credit and really like a lot of the design stuff that people liked maybe came from the team and not him.
That's true. It's tough to like really, these like game design like figureheads, like
Yeah.
how much of the product was really them.
Yeah, and also when they set out on their own, like they start a company, you know.
They
and
don't
so,
always have the same team, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of those famous, especially in Japan, where a lot of folks come from these big corporations, they may not themselves know how the development structure benefits the way they design. But when they set out on their own, they have to set up that entire team and how everybody hands off their work to each other. And if you don't have a good workflow for among creative people, then things fall apart.
Yeah. And you know what you're talking about.
I pretend to.
Yeah.
But then the guy who made Castlevania, he just released his game, independent game called Bloodstained, and it's like the perfect Castlevania game.
Wait, I have heard of this. That's right.
Yeah, it's very...
People have been saying it's great.
Yeah.
How's the music, though?
The music's very good. It feels like
okay.
a Castlevania soundtrack. And the gameplay is like the perfect kind of that game. Like, he knows why people bought and loved the mobile Castlevania games, and he made the best one of those. But the trade-off is, like, his game is hideous. Like, it's ugly.
Oh, really?
It's ugly.
Hold
like,
on. I want to see this now.
I'm very curious about what his process was and, like, why he chose to prioritize certain things.
Oh, I see.
But, like...
what kind of ugly? Because, like, Nidhogg 2 is ugly, but I like it.
Yeah, no, that's a style. This is more like the lighting doesn't make sense, or like all the stones are really shiny, or like...
Bloodstained Ritual of the Night?
Yeah, and there are some really cool... Not landscapes, but like he'll set up some cool shots or some cool rooms, and there'll be cool things in it. But like certain things will be really low res for some reason, and then something else on the same screen will be really high res. And so there are a number of things where I'm just very curious, like why, like what his process was, where he let it stay that ugly, or like didn't have somebody do like a lighting pass or a materials pass. And like it was to the point where like so many people were calling it ugly that one of the last trailers he released before the game came out was like him responding to all the complaints about it being ugly, and he was just like, I'm gonna show them, and then like showed an updated pass of like how bad it used to look versus how much better he made it look. And even then it's like it's still a little rough. But
okay, I'm starting to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just a little like the readability.
yeah,
there's some really like dense, noisy like background stuff.
Yeah,
which looks more detailed than the character that's supposed to be on top of it.
Yeah.
Ooh, that character model.
There's a lot of there's some stuff that's very good in it, and it's all inconsistent. And like you were saying, the readability, like the non-interactive foreground might be the hottest thing in the scene, and then everything that you actually interact with is all the same value.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
He apparently had I think Way Forward, which is like a 2D game development studio in SoCal who make a lot of 2D games. I think he contracted them for a year just to do a lighting pass and update the models and like help it look as good as it could. And that was like part of what the last year of development was for that. But the game itself, he'd made a very good game. So it's like he seemed to have a very specific vision for it, and maybe the things that he knows don't include art. But the game seemed to do really well, so maybe he'll have a very good art director for the next one that'll help him out.
It did look very Castlevania-y.
It's a great Castlevania game.
Yeah.
Like
more so the environments than the characters.
Yeah. They borrowed some of the monster lore that they used heavily in Castlevania, because some of that stuff is like free to use, like because it's in public domain.
Yeah.
But he made up a lot of new stuff for it that I don't think he could use because Castlevania probably would be too close to Castlevania.
Right. Yeah.
It's weird. There's a lot of old school game creators going independent, and then there's also a lot of indie people kind of trying to recreate those games that they really liked growing up and make their own versions of it. Like, I think today there's a new Contra-inspired game that just came out that looks like exactly what Contra was back in the 90s.
I was never big into Contra.
I like that game. It's weirdly...
I love Contra.
It's like weirdly dated now, where it's just like muscle men with bandanas and tight pants and no shirts, and they have machine guns, and it's
Spread
like...
gun!
Yeah, and it's like almost campy cool. Like it's fun in a silly way, but the action, like some of the action was pretty tight because you have to like be very precise, that is its own kind of gameplay where you have to get into like the flow of it to really enjoy it. And I think the person who made the game that just came out, which I can't remember what it's called, they really understood what made that series iconic, and really distilled it down into their own thing.
Nice.
And I just love pixel art as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's a very pixel art game, and it's like a weird, like a style that was created by technical limitations, but then like is very iconic in of itself. Yeah. That it's just its own style. It's like a creative choice at this point.
Yeah, and it holds up. I think it holds up.
Yeah, good pixel art.
Yeah,
it's kind of timeless.
It's like 2D art that is very thoughtfully composed, and so like if it is done poorly, it doesn't hold up. But when it's done well with an understanding of like readability and keeping stuff simple, it is a really cool style that is very unique.
Yeah, I've limited knowledge with making pixel art.
Yeah.
I have like a lot of respect for the artists back in the day who had those limitations. Like you have to force those limitations on yourself when you do pixel art. But as far as like back then, they had those limits. Like they couldn't just cheat it or whatever. Like that. I have like a lot more respect because it was difficult enough for me with modern, like tools or whatever to like make good pixel art.
Yeah.
And I gave up on that shit.
No, it's
making a pixel art animation sheet. Ugh. And I had no formal training with animation.
It's funny though, because like the limitation forces you to think about like the important principles that like really good painters or artists would have to think about anyway.
Yeah.
Where like you can't get into any details or as much as you would like to, so you have to think about readability or lighting. Or just like, what is my color palette? Okay, then I have to get the most out of this very limited color palette. And so then like you're so limited, you have to make the highest priority decisions first, which is just what are my values and where do they go, and what am I trying to communicate and how can I do that with the fewest amount of tools available to me.
Yeah.
So it forces people to make good decisions because they don't have the budget to do details or anything else. So then like when I look at like really good pixel art, I see the same thing as like something like Cuphead, which is like the like almost the exact opposite, but like really they're keeping this stuff so simple, and like it's the gameplay is so it's so complicated that they can't put in lavish details to show off. They have to have everything telegraph what's about to happen. And so like they have the budget to do all of this crazy detail, but they're really just focused on priorities, which is like telegraphing and clarity, and making sure things read so the players don't get angry because like they couldn't tell a thing was going to happen.
Right.
To me, it's like it's the same smart decision making that goes into that is something that people have to do with pixel art.
I love Cuphead because it's like one of those things where it's like it came out really well, like it's an awesome game, but then it's like, oh, it's these two characters and they're like cups, and like it's just a weird world where like there's cups and and like it like seems like it doesn't make sense, and it's like why would someone do that, but it's like it works and you just have to like do it, and then and people will get it.
It works in the same way because it's like they're going for that old cartoon like thing, and it works in old cartoons because you would just like take darts and throw it at two different words and
everything,
but then you make it believable.
Everything was like an acid trip back then. Like none of it made sense. But
it's like cup and head. Hey, you got a world.
No, but that's a game. Like imagine that it didn't exist, and then you're trying to pitch it to somebody, and you're like saying like, okay, well, one of you is a blue cup and one of you is a red cup, and you shoot like bullets out of your fingers, like they make a gun shape, and then like.
I don't think that's how they would have pitched that.
If people
I think it was a smarter way to pitch that game.
The art could have carried the pitches too.
Exactly. It's like we want to make a side-scrolling shooting game or whatever, like very difficult, but with like the style of a 19 whatever, like
a Fleischer cartoon. The 40s.
40s. I was gonna say 40s or 30s even.
Yeah, I don't remember the eras very well, but I do love. They did the callbacks to those animation, like they do a lot of style choices that are exactly like homages to the things that people did in that era.
They really went hard with that, and they accomplished it.
Yeah, like they nailed it.
Animating tubes. That's, a lot of it is like animated tubes. If you think about it, like that's what the limbs are.
The genie level has a 3D background that like there's so much stuff happening in the foreground you don't always notice it, but in that level they have this 3D background that rotates as you play, and it's like an actual 3D model, which is like a reference to like those Popeye cartoons and other cartoons from that era, I think all by the Fleischers, where they would build like an actual model and then they would rotate it and they would animate the character walking through it so it looks like it was scrolling, but it was like actual 3D stuff.
That's cool.
And I have to look this up now.
It was the coolest thing.
Because I'm sure I've seen it and not thought that because I was like a shitty little idiot kid when I probably saw it.
So as an animation nerd, like it's a very exciting thing to see where it's like, holy shit, like they even got that thing right. Yeah. And like if you don't know it, it's like that's a really cool background.
It's just cool.
Yeah, it's like good art direction that also is an homage.
God, I love stuff like that.
They're really smart.
You can like keep you can only appreciate it more the more you know about it.
Yeah.
But it always starts at like, it's good already.
Yeah.
But like, hey, it's even better if you knew the backstory behind this.
Yeah,
I
there's
love
like
that stuff.
it's like an Easter egg for you
Yeah.
if you know it.
A little nugget of enjoyment.
That game's so good.
And now they're making a cartoon.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how that looks because they have a very high bar to meet.
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, they hopefully it looks really good.
Thank you for joining us,
Thank
our
you for
lovely
joining us.
audience.
Thank you
but
for
we
having
gotta
me.
go play Smash Brothers. That's the honest truth of it.
That's good animation.
Yeah.
That's all right. Donkey Kong's hilarious. I laugh every time I play Donkey Kong.
No, yeah,
Their
like,
faces are so expressive.
Yeah.
I just remember from that like announcement.
Oh.
Like,
It's really just him. I don't know who else
no,
it is. Oh,
everyone, like when you go to training mode and like sometimes you'll have to slow down the speed.
All right, never mind, audience. We're gonna talk for a little bit more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. Good night. Say
It's
it.
Smash from here on out though, so if you don't care about Smash, then
And then and when you slow it down, then you really see like all the expressions. Everything is so good.
Like, you
Yeah.
just don't notice it because you're
like beating up Pikachu.
busy trying to beat
is
RJ.
so
and
adorable.
you're so mad. Pikachu?
Yeah,
that's
Pikachu.
awful. What do you mean it's adorable?
Like his face and everything, like he goes like, oh, and then he lands on the ground. He gets like knocked out, but like his facial expressions
All right.
throughout the
Get
whole
ready
thing.
for me to pause constantly while we play afterwards.
That's terrible. You can't hit Pikachu and then like savor the moment of hitting him.
Yes, I can.
I guess that's true.
I love
Do whatever
beating
you
up
want.
Pikachu.
Do whatever. I just like playing DK because he's just a big idiot.
Yeah,
Like
he is.
I love like when he gets hit
And his
just-
eyes pop
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
and it's just like if I'm having like a bad day, I'll play as DK and like I don't even have to win the match to feel good. I literally laugh alone because he's just a big stupid like monkey.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the DK like animated like show?
I've seen it in GIF form, which is all I need.
I saw it as a kid, and like that was my. I probably saw it before I actually playing a Donkey Kong game.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is Donkey Kong.
Oh
this
man.
shit sucks.
Oh, there is some good videos about that game though, and like that's like a really cool mixture of pixel art, but also like 3D art.
The SNES?
Donkey Kong Country on
Yeah.
Super Nintendo, the original Donkey Kong Country games, because it is they use 3D models to make it look very good.
Yeah.
But then they had to very specifically reduce it to the resolution that they could show on a Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's essentially using 3D models as a basis for pixel art and doing the right cleanup so it looks like it's 3D, which is really cool. And then that show, there's a YouTube video out there somewhere and it talks about why that show looks as bad as it does. And like they interview some of the cast and they're just like, yeah, like we didn't know what to do. Somebody just put us on a stage and told us to move around, which is why they're
did
always
motion
moving.
tracking for it.
Yeah.
And it looks so fucking bad.
Yeah, and it doesn't always make sense for what's happening. They were just
Yeah.
like, they just told us to get on stage and move around.
That's
Like we had to show off that we were using the motion tracking, so we just moved around. Like it didn't even make sense for what they were saying.
that explains so much.
Yeah, it's like the 3D equivalent of like the cartoons that inspired Cuphead, where it's just like I don't know, we were animating them, so we had to always have them bouncing. But
Just
like
not a lot of motion.
but it's aged less good than that 2D animation.
No. Yeah, I did.
Maybe somebody will make a Donkey Kong 90s cartoon inspired new series that's just that bad animation again.
Ooh. They probably shouldn't.
That's
probably a bad idea.
That's what the next Cuphead
That's a harder sell.
That'll be the 3D Cuphead game, the sequel.
No. Well, okay. That's enough bad ideas out of us. I think we should actually wrap up now.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us, Tucker.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like talking about games and cartoons.
Yeah, and talking about the production side of things, I think gave everybody a cool new perspective on things.
Cool. Yeah, glad to talk about it.
Yes, and thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Mm-hmm. And don't eat the paint.
Don't eat the paint. And also, if you enjoy the podcast, just recommend it to a friend.
Yeah, tell them, we found this cool new podcast. Force them to listen to it. If you're on a road trip, just turn it on and lock the doors so they can't get out.
Yeah, it's good for artists, good for people, trying to be artists, enjoy art, students. Okay.
And, email us questions.
Yeah, email us. Follow us on Instagram. Oh, search Cadmium Dread on Instagram and Facebook.
And you can find us on YouTube now.
We are on YouTube now.
I'm finally putting the episodes up. I did the thing that I said I would.
Yeah, so if you don't like any of those podcast platforms...
You're like, I hate Spotify. It's too convenient. You can find us on YouTube now.
Yep. All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.